Evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Uncut History. And we got Trippy in the chat there right now. Hail and high, he is. Hail and I. So, welcome to an early edition of Uncut History this week. And if I happen to do a stream next week, it will be at 6 p.m. Crazy things are happening. Some good, some bad, mainly just annoying. The truth of the matter is, we're supposed to get some very, very bad storms here this late evening, and I don't want to lose. I don't want to get knocked out in the middle of a thunderstorm. I just don't feel like doing that. So I bumped it up a little bit early. It's probably not going to be a long stream. This is more of what do you want to talk about? Open conversation. We're not really doing much else. So with that out of the way, I'm not going to delay anymore. What we're talking about today is my hype and fear of the new history films that are coming out later on this summer. So last July 4th was last week. Yeah, oh god, my brain's already gone. So last week for July 4th, Angel Studios released Sound of Freedom. Now you might be asking, why the heck am I talking about this? This isn't a history video. Well, technically it is, if you consider it is based on true events that occurred approximately 10 years ago and about events that are still occurring today. So I think it counts. It's telling events that occurred in the past. It's trying to tell a real life story, bring it to motion picture. This movie had an interesting journey to the box office. It was originally greenlit by Fox Studios, and then of course Fox was purchased by Disney. The movie was finished and everything, and Disney did not want to release it for reasons I can't get into on this channel. So Disney didn't want to release it, dumped it off, and Angel Studios ended up with the distribution rights to it. And Angel Studios are a faith-based movie-making studio. They've actually been making some headwaters in local theaters, especially around my area. They've been producing a limited series about Jesus Christ called The Chosen. I know a lot of people have gone and seen it and really liked it. I have not seen it. That's just not my personal things I'd go see in the movie theater. So they've actually made some headways in small theaters. They released Sound of Freedom on July 4th, and it has surprised a lot of people, doing very well at the box office. Actually beat out Indiana Jones 5, which, let's be honest, it's not that difficult to beat Indiana Jones 5 in the box office. But nevertheless, high accolades for Sound of Freedom are coming in. And I'm hoping I get the chance to see it this weekend. It's showing at a local theater of mine, and I wasn't originally going to go see it because most of the theaters that show small-scale movies, either I have to cross my fingers and my local theater shows it, or I got to drive an hour. And I don't feel like driving an hour. I'm sorry. Even for the best movies, I don't feel like driving an hour. And Sound of Freedom is about the story of Tim Ballard, who once worked for the CIA, then Homeland Security, and human trafficking situations, was getting upset by the lack of progress he was making, and decided to quit his government job and went on his own trying to rescue people from human trafficking. So, like I said, it is a piece of history, recent history. Then, of course, we got coming up next week, and I am so hyped for it. Oppenheimer, directed by I'm sorry, I'm getting too hyped. Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, is finally upon us. A historical epic about the life of Robert J. Oppenheimer and about the creation of the atomic bomb that ended the Second World War. And the movie is going to focus not only on the creation of the atomic bomb, what was happening at Los Alamos, New Mexico, but we'll also talk about the hot water Oppenheimer ended up in the late 1940s, 1950s, when he refused to help create a hydrogen bomb. So very excited to see this. Very excited. I don't think I have to say more. Might go see it in IMAX, Trippy. Again, I want to see this so badly in IMAX, but for me to go see it in IMAX, that's an hour plus drive. And as much as I love this film, how much I love to see this film, I don't feel like going in the city. I don't feel like going in the city. So I'll probably go into one of the local theaters to see it. But if you have a chance to see it on IMAX, by all means. I think this is like was it the first film that they've shot IMAX in black and white for? There's apparently black and white sequences. I think most of it's actually, I think it's the most I think a movie has been shot in a theatrical film like this was shot in IMAX. I know they were talking about all different lenses that they were using. I know they were using 65 millimeter. I know I'm saying a bunch of gibberish. Let's just keep moving on. Yeah, I see the viewer count dropping. Let's just keep moving on before I embarrass myself. Then in October, we had Killers of the Flower Moon. This is an Apple Studios release. I believe this was also another Fox. No, this wasn't. The next one is. Next one was. Anyways, Killers of the Flower Moon. This was picked up by Apple Studios. It is directed by Martin Scorsese, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, and is about the real life murders of select people of the Osage Nation that occurred back in the early 1920s. Essentially, what happened was all of these people moved to this Osage tribe when it was found that the tribe was sitting on oil deposits. Men began marrying into the Osage tribe and were killing off their spouses, their Osage spouses, and gaining all of the rights to the land. Totally not sus. Totally not sus. And this event led to one of the early crime situations that led to the creation of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The book came out about a decade ago. I never had a chance to read it. I think I own it somewhere. I just haven't had a chance to read it. One of my coworkers during the pandemic was reading it extensively and had high praise for it. And I've familiarized myself a little bit with the background of the murders. And then, of course, November, just released a couple days ago, the trailer for Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix and directed by Ridley Scott. At long last, the Napoleon biopic is here. Remember how long it took Stanley Kubrick his entire life to try to see this through. Never worked. And then, obviously, I think this is a separate production project, but I would not be surprised if Ridley Scott picked up some of the manuscripts that Kubrick had written. If you're familiar with the unfinished Napoleon film by Kubrick, he spent a half century doing research for that film that never got released. So he could have published a biography of Napoleon if he wanted to. Several. He never did. I think they have published a book about the production, the lack of production of the unfinished movie. But Ridley Scott is making his own biopic on Napoleon. Joaquin Phoenix. Before Joker, I would have said it was an interesting choice, but after Joker, I'm all okay with him playing Napoleon. Should be a splendid picture. So as you can tell, I am hyped about all of these pictures. But, and I do have a lot of buts when it comes to historical films, accuracy is one of those things. I do not like it when accuracy is sacrificed for spectacle. You can look up many, many movies, most notably The Patriot, sacrificing accuracy for spectacle. Boy, there are enough videos out there about what's wrong with The Patriot that I never have to make one. I can just kick back, relax, and just watch them. Beau is afraid. What is that? Beau is afraid. What is that, Trippy? I am interested. Anyways, so I am a stickler for accuracy. Now, I will say I give a little leeway. I understand that you have a certain amount of runtime to tell this real life event. Typically, the camera can only focus on one thing to make it coherent. And I am always okay if you have to create composite characters. And what a composite character is, in a historical setting, you have 10 people doing things, but it would take forever to explain those 10 people. So you just make one character out of it. A very good example would be in the miniseries Chernobyl. There is the one scientist, I forget the actress that plays her. She is a composite character for the hundreds of scientists that were telling the Soviet Union, you don't realize what you're messing with. That's allowed. Oh, it's a Phoenix film. It's a Phoenix film. So I'm always okay composite characters. I understand if you have to combine events or if you have to simplify things, you have to dumb it down. I'm okay with that. What I'm not okay with is making crap up, especially for the sake of drama. It just gives off the wrong message and takes history should be a good. History is one of the best ways of storytelling. It is literally telling our past. It is the most informational, educational form of storytelling you can have. It can be and allegorical. You can use a lot of historical events to be allegories of mistakes that are made today. But Man, my brain's just going all out of. There's all these trucks just flying up the road. It's just distracting me. Sorry about this, folks. In any case, storytelling is the best way. I'm having a moment. History is the best form of storytelling. That's my opinion of it. Blah, 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 blah. So do not sacrifice certain aspects of the history because you think it'll make a more engaging story. No, you're not. You're making it more confusing, more muddled. And one of my biggest fears with just about all the films that are coming out right now, it's the runtime. Case in point with Napoleon, this is going to be, I think, a 2-hour, 40-minute film. I think that's the runtime of saw. If not, it's definitely a 3-hour film. It's trying to tell most of Napoleon's life story. It's telling his rise to power, and it appears it's going to show his reign as emperor all the way through the Battle of Waterloo. So, that's his entire military career. Scott has stated that there's going to be six battles depicted in this one movie. We are talking about Napoleon Bonaparte. That's a lot of battles. Back in 1970, there was a movie about the Battle of Waterloo, 3 hours in length in itself. And that was just about one battle. The movie Gettysburg, about the Battle of Gettysburg, is 4 hours just to tell the story of one battle. You're trying to put 6 battles of the Napoleonic Wars into one movie. And you're trying to tell the relationship between Napoleon Bonaparte and his first wife, Josephine. This sounds like he's trying to cover a lot, and it's making me very, very nervous that the pacing will be a complete mess. Oh, yes. Trippy, thank goodness you're here in the chat. You can just sum up all my dumb comments tonight. Trippy summed it up perfectly. History is dramatic and stupid as makes great entertainment. Indeed, it does. So I am very nervous about the runtime for this movie. Oppenheimer is 3 hours. Now, I have a little more faith with Christopher Nolan than I do with Ridley Scott. Why? Well, Christopher Nolan did not direct Prometheus. I'm a major fan of the Alien franchise. Let me get that stinking. So I have more faith in Christopher Nolan as a director in 2023 than I do Ridley Scott. And if we're predominantly focusing on the creation of the atomic bomb, I feel that you can do a lot with 3 hours. But we also are going to try to be covering his personal life with his wife, Kitty. We're also going to be trying to cover his falling out with the federal government when he was being branded a communist, going through the McCarthy trials, things like that. I'm worried it's a little too much. I am very worried. And then you have the opposite effect of you take a story and stretch it to 3 hours if you don't do the pacing right. Then you're bored. And then it's 3 hours. You take what should be a fascinating story, the creation of the most destructive weapon in world history, and you turn into a dull feature. And the reputation of movies about the creation of the atomic bomb is not very great in terms of historical accuracy. I have faith in Nolan, but Nolan, when he does historical films, case in point, Dunkirk, he is a stickler for accuracy, for practical effects. So that's good. But sometimes he can be too much of a stickler. Like I said, I'm always a person who believes pendulum can swing both ways. One extreme does not equal the other extreme. When you get to Dunkirk and you see these sequences of these soldiers that are on the beaches and they're in these nice straight lines, that's not what it looked like in real life. It was sheer chaos. And I believe that there was a movie, was it The Atonement, has a 5-minute sequence, an uncut 5-minute sequence. It's a one-shot take of the Dunkirk beaches. And it has more grit to it than the entire movie of Dunkirk has. So while it's great that Nolan was able to get all these actors on the beaches, and he was able to shoot in Dunkirk, and he was able to get access to all these planes, that's all he used. It looked empty. He couldn't dirty Dunkirk. It just looked like an empty backlot. It didn't look like an actual war zone. So so there is a precedent that makes me a little worried about Oppenheimer. That being said, from what I've seen in the trailers, the sets that they have for Los Alamos look spot on. So that's giving me hope. And it's also a much smaller story. And in terms of the physical scope of it, I mean, we're not really talking about battles here. We're talking about scientists trying to create a weapon. So it's a little easier to control the production value on that one. And then Killers of the Flower Moon, I am very nervous about a couple reasons. One, the last film Martin Scorsese did, The Irishman, was also 3 hours. It was a 3 hour long film. It was the boringest Scorsese film I've ever seen. Me and my friends, sorry, my covering was starting to cover the screen. Me and my friends were so hyped. Oh, Scorsese's getting back together with De Niro. He's getting Pacino involved. He's bringing Joe Pesci out of retirement. This is the dream team. Well, it was a very slow, meandering tromp through the story of the supposed death of the. Yeah, I'm having a brain fart. Look, it was a lot. Name. Oh my god, I can't remember. This should show you how much I don't remember about The Irishman. Who was De Niro's character? Frank Sheeran. Okay, it tells the story of Frank Sheeran, a member of a member of the mob who the story is he killed Jimmy Hoffa. That's the theory, that the mob had him kill Jimmy Hoffa. That is what Sheeran claimed. It's still disputed if that's what really happened or not. So it should have been a great story, had a great cast, but it was so slowly paced. It was so slow. It ruined it. It ruined the movie for me. I couldn't, and there are good moments in The Irishman, but it just ruined it for me. So I'm really worried that Scorsese's going to take another slow time with the Killers of the Flower Moon. I hope not. I really like Scorsese. I hope it was just a fluke, The Irishman. I hope Scorsese isn't losing his touch. My other concern with the Killers of the Flower Moon is the fact that we're dealing with a story about white Americans going in and murdering Native Americans, which is a true story. It absolutely happened. These people were evil, what they were doing. But we also live in a day and age of historical revisionism, and anything a certain group does is evil and must be ostracized. And instead of just identifying the evil perpetrators, everybody is linked to the perpetrator purely based on the visual appearance. And that's just not fair. That's just not fair. So that's my fear, that they're going to go in and really do a lot of revisionism with what actually happened with the Osage Nation murders. I hope they don't do that. I really hope they stick to the true story, show how evil these perpetrators really were, but don't turn them into this is everybody in the 1920s. This is every American. No. People did not condone it then. We don't condone it now. So that's my big concern with this film. And also it's with Apple TV. The good news, I think they made a deal with Paramount so they can release it in theaters, but that probably means it won't get a home media release. And I'm so frustrated that we don't get any home video releases anymore because of all the streaming wars. So like Killer of the Flower Moon probably won't get a home video release. Thankfully, Oppenheimer and Napoleon should. No, wait, this is an Apple TV production too. Darn it. I don't know if we'll get it. So, and hopefully Sound of Freedom gets a home video release too. Let me look at the chat. Yes. So what does Nolan mean by that? I only use practical effects to recreate the Trinity test. What does he mean by that, Trippy? Does he have certain contacts? Does he have access to a certain desert? He can just drop certain bombs without anybody knowing. Without anybody knowing. So I just want to come on. I want to talk about these films. I'm hyped for them, but I do have my shields up. I've been fooled many times before, and in this day and age where people will use they will take his they will treat history like spaghetti, and they will take their writing pen as a fork into that spaghetti and twist it and contort it until it's a mess of red pile of goop. They will do that to harm, they will harm it sometimes. And I mean, I did a stream a few weeks back about when the African Queen season about Cleopatra was coming out. I went on a rant about that. I mean, everybody went on a rant about that. That's case in point of why I'm fearful of when Western movie television studios try to adapt history for the big screen. I want it to happen. I want you. I more history movies, the better for me. Like I said, history is my favorite form of storytelling. It's the most educational. It's also the most entertaining because fact is often more stranger than fiction. And so, but we all have reasons to be concerned. All right. Something else I want to talk about since we're talking about historical films. It's been a while, really, since historical films have been making headway. Like you hear big trailers about, like Oppenheimer's been hyped up for over a year now. I can't recall a movie about like a historical event, a distant historical event quite like this being hyped. And you had a lot of movies coming out there in the late 2010s, and then of course during the pandemic about historical events. The musical biopic got a big boost, thanks in large part to Bohemian Rhapsody. But you don't hear a lot about history films. There was a movie that came out a few years ago. It's called Free State Jones. We actually talked about it on a previous live stream where I ranked American Civil War movies, and it was about this county in Mississippi that rebelled against the Confederacy. And I enjoyed the movie, but I know a lot of people didn't because of pacing reasons. And I have my own grievances with it. But I think what really killed that movie was the advertising. If you ever see the trailer for Free State Jones, it tells you the whole movie. The whole movie's told. Now, some could argue, well, it's a historical event. Everybody knows what's going to happen anyway, so it's spoiled to begin with. True, but still hype it up. I want to see how you're going to visualize and depict these historical events. Don't just show it to me in a 2-minute collage, essentially. So there was a slew of history movies that come out. A lot of history movies that were coming out, they were going right to the bargain bin, and they weren't that good. Quality control for the material culture was not that good with those studios. They were just throwing them out there. So hopefully, if should Oppenheimer succeed, Oppenheimer got to succeed. It got to be a big, right? It got to be a big hit. Unless it's a terrible film, then it doesn't deserve to be a big hit. If Oppenheimer is a big hit, hopefully this will get studios into wanting to make historically accurate history pieces. Accurate history pieces. That's the key. Not your patriots and not your warping of history like the Woman King. We're talking about accurate history telling. I mean, there's people who degrade movies like Zulu, saying, "Oh, it's not caring at all, and it's a one-sided telling." No, if you ever seen Zulu, while it has some very big historical inaccuracies, its overall handling of the Zulu people is very well done. The Zulus are given equal footing to the British soldiers. Anytime somebody says something about the Zulus in the movie, like they degrade the Zulus, there's a character in the movie that's going to tell you, "Shut up, these people are serious." So there were movies back in the day. We always have this misconception that movies back in the 50s and 60s were, when they did historical depictions, they were very inaccurate. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of bad historical films in the 50s and 60s. But there are a lot of bad historical films in the 2000s and 2010s. So I don't think it's just a sign of a times thing of historical inaccuracy. I think it's just a lack of people caring. People think they can make a cheap buck. Most time people love using historical events for propaganda. And after all, movies at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, they are some form of propaganda. Maybe not of a government, but certainly of an individual and their vision. And it's important that filmmakers don't get lost in trying to force people in the past to fit their narrative when they put it on the big screen. Because then you end up with something more fictitious than Star Wars. Star Wars probably has more historical accuracy than some of the trite that they put out today. Let's just be honest here. I'm talking historical accuracy. So it's important that we get history films back in popularity, get the historical epic backs like the Ben-Hurs, like the Last of the Mohegans, but also tell a historically accurate story. And that doesn't mean you have to tell a true story. You can use a historical setting to tell a fictitious tale. My favorite example, Master and Commander, Far Side in the World. It is the best example of taking a historical setting, being very accurate with that setting, but your actual plot and your characters are fictitious. But the world is so believable because you've researched so hard to make it so accurate. That is the best example of what a historical film should be. Master and Commander, Far Side of the World. If you've not seen it, you got to see it. And not just for the history value, it's just a great chase movie about two warships duking it out during the Napoleonic Wars. It's just a great chase film in itself. And the crew, you're always interested to see what Jack Aubrey, played by Russell Crowe, what new idea he'll come up with to get his crew out of a situation. Trippy sends in, have you seen The Nick on Cinemax? I have not. The Nick on Cinemax. Ooh, The Nick. About the Knickerbocker Hospital in New York during the early 20th. Oh, this sounds good. Wait. Let me share the screen. Hold on one moment, guys. Let me share the screen. I guess if I'm going to read a screen, I should just put myself on there. There we are. The Nick is an American medical period drama television series on Cinemax, created by Jack Amiel and Michael Belger, and directed by Steven Soderbergh. Series follows Dr. John W. Thacker and the staff at a fictionalized version of the Knickerbocker Hospital in New York during the early 20th century. Oh, I like this, especially considering I have a certain character I want to write a fictional series about in this time period, no less. Not in New York City, but nearby. Operates with inventive surgeons, nurses, and staff who struggle against the limitation of medical understanding and practice to minimize morbidity and mortality. Dr. John Thacker, partially based on William Stewart. Oh, okay, he's built on Halstead. He's based on Halstead. The new leader of the surgery staff balances his cocaine and opium addictions against his ambition for medical discovery and his reputation amongst his peers. Dr. Algernon Edwards, I am butchering all of this, a Harvard-educated Black American surgeon based on Daniel Hale Williams and Louis T. Wright, who trained in Paris, is much more qualified than any other candidate, must fight for respect among the all-white hospital staff, as well as in the racially charged city. While struggling to keep the lights on, the hospital attempts to attract a wealthy clientele without sacrificing quality of care. Man, Trippy, I think you just found me something to watch. Yeah, this sounds pretty good. So I see it only ran 2 seasons. Was it intended for a short run, or did it get canceled? The reason I asked this, around the same time, Ridley Scott was an executive producer for another medical period drama. It was actually set during the American Civil War. I think it was it Mercy Street. It was called Mercy Street. Let me pull that up. I actually have it back behind me somewhere on the shelf over there. And I got to watch the first season of Mercy Street, and it was pretty darn good, which maybe that should give me some more faith in Napoleon. And as much as I have grievances with what Ridley Scott has done to the Alien franchise, and even though Gladiator is not the most historically accurate film, I won't deny that he makes a very, very good setting in Gladiator. Like his version of the Coliseum is just breathtaking to watch, even if there's some, what I've been told, is major problems. Yeah, but this was Mercy Street. Yeah, it came out right about a little bit later, 2016, 2017. And this was really good. Mary Elizabeth Winstead was in it. She actually played Mary Finney, who was actually a real life character. Several of the characters are real life. Oh yeah, Alan Pinkerton shows up in the second season. I didn't get into the second season just yet, but it's the same thing. It ran 2 seasons and then they cut it. because they said it wasn't getting enough views, which is just a real shame. It was really the peak of the medical drama there. And I'd rather watch the Nick or Mercy Street over Grey's Anatomy. Ugh. I am gonna have to give that a watch, Trippy. I mean, that's what I meant. And I'm all for telling. I think history tends to do better when it's a miniseries. Uh, Case in point, Chernobyl, Waco, John Adams. What was one? The Terror, even though that's more of a there's a lot of more. It's a very historical fiction horror story, but the Terror is still really good. It was starred Jared Harris in that one about the what happened to the Franklin expedition. So I feel history's best at miniseries. Best examples, Band of Brothers, hands down. Band of Brothers, best example of historical fiction, or not. Well, it's not that really fictional, to be quite honest. Band of Brothers, great example of taking a historical event to put it into a miniseries. So I think it takes more time, slower pacing. The Good Lord Bird, I actually really much enjoyed that, minus the final episode. The final episode was a dud. They should have reworked the ending. I think they could combine it into a 6-part series rather than stretch it out to 7 episodes. But that's just it was about John Brown, his fun times in Kansas, and then his plotting of the Harper's Ferry raid. Generation Kill. Generation Kill? Is that what I'm thinking it is? Heard of this one? Okay, it's one of Roser, but I have heard of this one. Oh, they did one on the invasion of they did one invasion of Iraq very soon as well. I can see. Do you even call that historic? I mean, yes, I consider this a historical piece, but 2003, 2008. Wow, that grace period. So yeah. So to sum my ramble, this has probably been the second worst live stream I've done. No disrespect to those who've watched. I'm defecating on myself on that one. That's self-deprecative humor right there. Oppenheimer's coming out next week. Killer of the Flower Moon's coming out in October, and then Ridley Scott's Napoleon's coming out in November. These all look to have the potential of being very good, relatively accurate retellings of historical people and events. But I am nervous because some of these directors have been known to have been starting to lose the art of pacing. And in this day and age, people love taking historical pieces, misconstruing it to fit their current message without allowing the people to past just to tell their story. Just tell their story. You'll learn more from it if you just let the people to past speak without a filter. Oh, mostly commentary. Okay. So we are going to wrap up. Like I said, it was going to be a short stream, and I got to depart. There's things going on here at the house. We will have a stream next Thursday. I just don't know if it's going to be an early stream or it'll be normal time. Reason being, may or may not be getting an early screening of Oppenheimer. All right, we're going to tune out. You know what's happening next? We're going to play the music. Yep, the music's playing. It's great. Hey, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Before we head off, just want to let you know, this Saturday, another episode of Artifact Highlight. This is the big one as we explore the new collection room of my close friend, a humble collector. We filmed this new collection room. We're going to talk about some of the artifacts he highlights, because that's the name of the series, in that video. That video will be coming out this Saturday, 6 p.m. Uncut History every Thursday, unless I decide otherwise. And we will also be working on some new projects, some interesting new content coming to the channel. All right, enjoy the music. I'm Ed out.